First of all, thank you for having me in this great, amazing Books a Day, Romania. And I wanted, to be honest, to come in person for many times, but I didn't have the opportunity. But at least we are online. So thank you for attending my session. And today I would like to give you a very crucial topic about optional class, because there is a lot of like, no, don't use it, let's use it. And when there is something new always in the space of Java, not some, most of the developers, even myself, would like to use it. And especially this optional class is very special when it comes to the main built-in, API, especially streams and things like this. So let's get back the story a bit to know why optional just introduced in Java is because a very important aspect. It's not just to avoid null or something like this, but we will talk about it. But why I decided to have this presentation, because whenever I do code review, because I'm obsessed with code review, it's very, very important. And this is how also I learn from others and others learn from us. And we keep our standard and, not just the styling and guidelines and everything, no, the business constraints and architecture constraint. And there is a lot of aspect from the code review. So I found like interesting parts throughout, like people using optional in different way. And always whenever I talk about this in a conversation, I get questions. So I wanted to, okay, let me have a talk about it and address all the questions and also that has been mentioned or reviewed during the code review process. So we with code, so you can see the code, how it was done and how it should be done, and to clarify the use of actually of the optional class. So if we get back to Brian Guts, main definition of the optional class, it will be like this: optional class used to and meant to be a return type for methods, not as an argument, not anything else. It's just a return type of the method when we don't know there is might be result or not, or the result might be absent, but we want to represent it in a safe way. We don't want to return nulls, because nulls is hurting us, and what is the problem with nulls. So this is the main intention. And when it comes to stream API, if you find like aggregations, like when we use aggregation like sum, count, things like, it's logical to return zero because it means nothing. There is no aggregation happens. But what about objects? What about like, if you're returning another construct? So it's very bad to return null to represent absence of the value. So this is why optional should exist to satisfy this condition. So whenever you have like find first, find whatever it is, like as a singular result, you will find optional always. And you can see that also if you are using Spring, I assume most of us like using Spring, as well as Java, Jakarta is named development. So you will find that in Spring repository, even they have to return, optional to give you like the result is not absent because of your query. So it's around there everywhere. So it's not something bad to use. So this is the story about this topic. And my name is Mohamed Taman, and I'm working as a Chief Solutions Architect for a company called Efortel. Efortel is a telecommunication company, and we are doing a lot of things to re-innovate our solutions. We are providing solutions for MNVO, Mobile Operator Virtual Network. So let's talk about like, also I'm Java Champion and Groundbreaker Ambassador. I write frequently for Java Magazine, Oracle, like IBM developer. And also I found it's very interesting to have this presentation in sort of articles. So those two, when I share this presentation with you, you'll find this linkable links to the main article with more business, code and cases and how it should be done in a proper way. So you will have a mix. This presentation, you can use it as a reference card as well. And also, if you would like more detail and explanation what I'm doing and what should be done, also you can have these two articles on Java Magazine. You can reach me and ask me any question at any time. I will get back to this slide later on, or just Google my name and you will find everything. So let's jump in for our agenda. So I have categorized all these questions under 5 categories. First, how do we survive from null pointer exception by using optional? And even there is some question you will see that it's very crazy. Like I'm using optional and I'm getting null. Second category, how we really return or set when there is no value present, how we can use optional to represent the absence of the value in a proper way. Finally, how to consume optional values effectively. It's not like just I'm getting optional using just some method. There is a bunch of methods that will help you and as a shortcut and will reduce your time of just using get and if present is present. How to avoid optional anti-pattern, that is things that I have found over like code review, people misuse optional. And finally, also how to use optional in a professional way and hook it with streams, hook it with different like libraries inside Java, so to make use of it. So let's jump into the first category, how to survive from null pointers, even if I'm using. One question, like someone asked me, like, man, you said like optional saves us from getting null, but I'm getting null when I use optional. Like, let me see your code and then I can decide. And during this, I found something like this. So the people like using, yeah, I get employee. If I didn't find the value that employee assigned, then they saw that it will be okay like this. So this is not proper way to initialize null, and never ever assign null to an optional variable because it's a container for the value. So the container cannot be null because it holds value and show either this value is present or not. So never assign that container for the value null. And the proper way to do it is, if you'd like to say this employee does not exist, just say optional.empty. Use empty method to represent the non-presence of the value. And this is, by the way, you will find a very interesting legend here I always put, like since Java 8. So whenever you are using Java 8 or Java 11 or Java 17 or whatever the version you are, at least you will know in which version this method introduced, so you can use it and what is the alternative for that. So let's see something else also. And never call get directly to get the value. And by the way, some of these things you might know, but when we go in advance to review more and more, you will see like things that you will never thought about it. So let's see that we have HR service and we get an employee, and yeah, we got an employee. Let's just call get to get the value. This is very interesting. And if there is no value, you know that no such element exception will be thrown. Why? Because you have to check about the presence of the value. So if you would like to use this, and option.get, definitely it's available since Java 8. I will not repeat. It's available since when. So when you see the legend, you will know since when it's available in the Java namespace. So the proper way to do this is like, yeah, I would like to check first. I have it, use is present. And after that, I will do whatever it is, either getting the value or assign some other value or not present or empty or whatever it is. By the way, it will be empty if it's not exist. Okay, nice. Let's see something else. And don't use null directly when you have an optional and need a null reference. Sometimes in Java APIs, we have things like this. So we are calling reflection API, and I'm doing reflection some classes, and I would like to check if there is some methods available, how to call it directly, or I have to have an instance of that class if it's instance method or static method. So we would like to check about the method. So I'm getting the method, and my class, instance of my class, it might be empty or not, based on my method is static or not. So I get optional of my class, and then I'm checking about is it present. Then I invoke my method like here with instance of my class if it is not static. And if it's static, I don't have to have a reference or instance of that class, and I can call it directly. So this is something like this. You have to pass null. And what to do, how to reduce this in one call, and yes, we can do this. Use optional or else null to return null. So it just shorten your code, and you can use it like this. If there is an instance of the class, you don't have to use is present, you don't have to use get, and this will satisfy all the condition. If this class is of that method is needed as an instance, it will be present and it will be returned. If it's not empty, it will return another value, which is in our case, what we need is null. So this is, even if we won't like to use null, we can use it with optional using or else. And or else since Java 8. Let's get back to the category number 2, which is now it's more and more. This is how I see it, how people trying to use null, and because of misunderstanding of optional. But if you'd like to use optional as a return type, you have to always make sure that the optional of that type is not null at all. It's always empty, because the caller, when they use it, they don't have to get null pointer exception when they call get or even is present or something like this. So be aware of this. Like what to do when there is no value is present. What do you need? Like just it will return an empty. No, sometimes I would like to return different values, different like things. So what to do here? And unfortunately, some people know 2 or 3 methods. They don't go through all the API to read about different methods. So they always use is present, get, or else. So it's like culture my code and boilerplate, and why we have to do it like this. So don't use always, like avoid. I'm not saying like using, but in some cases we have different methods that can help us. So for example, I found this code snippet, like when getting user status, and I have something static like unknown as a user status, and I would like if the user has a status, okay, get it. If it's not, just return the normal unknown status for that user. Like, okay, we can do it like this. It will not harm you, but it's very long and useless code. And I told you before, we can use something like or else. And also we have to make sure that or else get, when to use what. This is very important, and I will tell you why. So in this case, it's very easy to use or else as an elegant alternative, as I told you, to set or return an already constructed default object. Why? Yes, this is very important, because sometimes I found people using or else get, as we're going to see next, but let me give you a very important performance tip for this. So to get back to the previous code, as you have seen, like we used is present and then get and or else return, and here we can have it in one call, like status or else user status. So if the user actually has a status and the status exists, it will be returned, or it will return unknown status for this user as a string. It's not as an optional, because this is the return type. This is the final value. Nice. And here, don't use or else get. Like, what? You're confusing me. Like, why? Yeah, for one reason. If you are returning a computed value, this is very important, because sometimes, let's say, like in the article, I have shown it, like when I would like to get some employees or some data from I have a database and I have a cache, and I would like to check about if the data exists in the cache first. If it's not, go to the database, fetch it, and put it in the cache, and so on. If we are using or else, and for example, you are searching for user status in the cache, okay, and you said like or else, you get it from the database. Either ways, if the value of the user exists in the cache, also the query to fetch the data from the database is going to run. Why? Because this is how or else you work. It will run the computation and then will compare. If optional has this value, I will return it, or the computed value. So in this way, it's performance hit because you are just call the database uselessly and you don't need this. So in this case, we use or else. So if you have, put it in your mind, if you have pre-constructed static value that you would like to return and the optional use or else. If it's not and it's computed value, it's better not to use or else and use or else get. And sometimes, yes, you can use this way to avoid, but as I told you, don't do it because it will culture your code. And in shortcut way, you can use or else get this with computed status or the as a method reference or something like this. This is very important for the performance. So in this way, if you have the data in the cache, because it's deferred here, it's, as you can see, it's lambda, and in this way it's deferred call. If the state, if the status has a value, that's it, it will be returned. In our case, we get it from the cache, so we don't have to go to the database. If it's not, okay, then call the database to get the data or the status for that user. So I hope it's clear. Let's move on to, and we are lucky enough to have it in Java 8, so we can use it. Some other code, like sometimes I would like to throw exceptions. You know, sometimes this is a business requirement for our REST API to throw some exception to be mapped to some certain like error codes, and then we give a proper message. So what to do sometimes, like, yes, we can use something like this, status that is present, I will return status. If it's not, I will throw exception, no such status for that user as a message. Like, this is not an elegant way. If you would like to do it in, as a shortcut, we have a method to do this. So it's very easy to use or else throw. But someone will ask me, hey, man, sometimes and most of the time we have our customized exceptions, right? And we need to use our business created exceptions and which has a specific meanings. Yeah, we can do this. It's very easy. So if you would like just to return no such element as a default, you can use or else throw if the status does not exist. But in this way, and this is, by the way, available since Java 10. And the other way, I can also use different version like illegal state exception or user not found exception in this way, which is I don't recommend, and you have to avoid it. Using status is present, as I told you, most of the developers knows about Git and is present and trying to use it everywhere to handle optional, while we have a lot of methods as a shortcut to do this. So instead of doing this, we can easily doing something like this. So return status dot or else throw illegal state exception new, or you just provide as a lambda your exception with the message that you would like to have, or the message will be caught in your like advisor or filter that can catch and wrap it in a proper message for your client. So we have two methods now, and this method using gets applier, and you can provide whatever you like. So it's customized, and it's available since Java 8. It's very interesting. Now let's move to question number 3: how to consume optional effectively. Like what? I'm just calling Git or using some methods, and the data is going to be returned. No, there is a lot of things you are going to see here, and it's very important to know about it, because not always people consume the data and the optional values effectively as it should be. So don't, yes, I will say it always, don't use this like if. It doesn't mean that you have, there is a lot of argument about Git and is present to be removed in the future, something because it's a better representation of how we get the data and it might throw an exception and this way. But there is some cases that we can use is present and get, but not all the cases should be solved using these only two methods. Okay, this is why I'm like avoid. When I say avoid, I gave you alternative solution for this. So yeah, we have if present. Use if present to consume optional value if it is present, or nothing if it's not. Something like this. I would like to print the status if it's already exists. If it's not, I don't want to do anything else. So I say like status, please, if you are exist, or some values coming, or I'm reading from stream, and if it's only present, just print it. If it's not, I'm not interested to see some other results. So we can use if present and do whatever you like. And it's available since Java 8. So also avoid using this construct to execute an empty based action if the value is not present. Sometimes, like, yes, I would like just to print status not found, or just for debugging, or for some, a logging that I was searching for something, this user is not logged in or something. You try to get some stuff, and if it's not, you would like just to state that you didn't find the data, the calculation doesn't happen, or the execution doesn't work, something like this. So I found code construct like this, and code reviews like, oh, very interesting, why we have to use this, while we can actually use if present else. So the naming conventions are very important, and if you memorize like if present, I can use it if I don't want to execute I'm not interested in non-presence value. It's only if a present. And if I'm interested in both, I can use it like this. So if the value is present or else, you can just say like system.out.println. If it's not, say status not found, it's in one line, and it's very elegant to use, and it satisfies your case. That's it. And this is, by the way, available since Java 9. Let's go to some code. Yeah, avoid again. Why? Why to avoid? To do what? To return other optional when no value. Sometimes, yes, because my method is not just returning a string, it should return an optional. I should return an optional of that status, not just the status as we did before. So in this case, I have to return something to the caller. So yeah, I have a status I would like to check, and I have a default status, which of type optional, which is this case default status, or I create an optional like this, optional of bending, and then I'm checking if the status does not exist, and okay, please return the default status. So this is like boilerplate code. I don't like it. So this way we can do it like this. It's very easy. And yes, we can use or else get because we don't want to execute something, but this is a pre-constructed value, so we can use or else. But this is also not efficient to do this job, and we can do it in this way. Status or is taking another optional, and it will return the optional of this value if the status does not exist. And even we can do it without defining default status like this immediately. So we don't have to waste one line to just create the binding optional construct and do it. So it's very easy to return status or and optional of binding. So you use or to return other optional. This is much preferable if you are using Java 9 and above. So also don't use is present and get with lambdas because it breaks the chain of the lambda calling. So something like this, I found it's very strange. It's just lead of not understanding the optional. So yeah, I'm searching for a product and I'm getting product stream and I'm filtering and find first one. And then if it's present, please get the product name. If it's not, say not found. So like why we have to break, it's painful to break the chain of the stream, and it's like why to do like this. If what if I would like to apply some other like methods to do some logic. Okay, avoid this. So you don't use this to not break the chain. And I found some people doing this because it's breaking. Yeah, fine. First, and then they use products.map to get the name, and or else not found. Like, why, guys? Like, why we have to do this? So it's easier to not break the chain even to use or else. It's very easy. And using map, it will satisfy the case. So we have products, we have the stream, we are filtering based on the price. If the price, specific price, this product has a specific price less than the price that we declared, and we found the first product, I map it this to, I'm using map, not flat map, to get another optional of the name of that product, and then if it does not exist or else will do the job and return not found. And if the status is exist, the product name already exists, so the name will be returned. So that's it. It's one line. It doesn't break the change, and this is much clearer and understandable. Don't check for values to throw an exception. So I found something like this. Yeah, okay, if the card is not present and the card does not have that product, please throw this exception. Okay, what to do here? And this is like because I get the product stream and I didn't found, I would like to throw an exception. And as I told you before, we can use a chain. So use or else throw with lambdas. So the card, I filter based, I would like to filter and search. Do you have this product? If it's not exist, or else throw. So this is how I throw an exception in one call. So I don't have to use the breaking of the stream in order to throw an exception. Okay, don't overuse optional by chaining its methods for a single purpose of getting value. Yes, because I told you, people are obsessed by using optional, so they use it everywhere. And this is very complicated, to be honest. Like AI just interested to return a string about the status. Like why I have to use optional? Because and then of nullable the status if it's not null, then if it's not null, please return binding, which means it does not exist. Like it's a strange and weird behavior for me, to be honest. So make it simple. Let's make it simple because this is very complicated, man. And just use status. If it's equal to null, return binding. If it's not, return the status. Because it's a simple string. There is no optional here involved in order to create optional to use it. Because finally, optional is a container and it has a value. It's a class. It's occupy the memory. And we will see in the anti-patterns how it's really harmful when we overuse it. So this is something I wanted to point out because, as I told you, like people are obsessed sometimes and developers using optional, and it leads something like that. So let's move on to another category, which is, okay, how can I use optional while designing my APIs? This is where it came from, anti-patterns and misuse of option. So you would see a lot of fun here. Let's go to explore it. Don't declare any field of type option. I think that I have mentioned this before. I found something like this. We have an entity and we would like to represent that the zip code is optional. So, okay, I can create an optional. Or even I would like to create an empty optional because I would like to represent it as it exists. Don't use, this is will complicate the entity type or whatever it is for the caller to fulfill the data simply. So they have to wrap it inside optional and put it in setters, and then like no. Remember the main definition of the optional. It's meant to be used as a return type of the methods. This is very important. When you understand really this definition, you will know that you cannot use optional as an argument. You cannot use it as a data type. You cannot use it as a instance field or something like this. So this is something really harmful and complicating my object. So we don't have to do this. Simply just use it like this. And also option does not implement serializable. So if you are using any kind of Java being like transformation or using JSON for things like this. There is no serialization involved here, so you will miss a lot of stuff. Then developers come to cry like, I couldn't serialize my object. Yes, because you are using optional. Another anti-pattern I found, literally, don't use optional in constructor's argument to represent that the post code is optional because I can pass null. It's very easy. So, and then I'm using post code as an optional field. This is the first anti-pattern, and to represent just it's not, it might exist or not. It's optional. No, it doesn't mean that it's optional that you are going to create your argument to represent optional because I can pass null and it's complicating my way of calling your post code. Imagine how I should call it. And then this is not a proper way to do this. As I told you, this is an anti-pattern. Don't use option and argument, even for constructor. So the proper way to do it is like this. Use normal, data types, and this is optional field, thus it may be null. Then I came here to say, like, when I get in the get method, I'm checking if it's of type nullable. Okay, the post code return an empty string. This of nullable actually will check about the nullability of the post code, and if it does not exist because this is optional and it shouldn't be null, it's going to return an empty optional for us, and everything will work perfect. So you don't have to complicate it in the calling because we just need to use it here. And this is only one line satisfy all the requirement for you. So if it's null, just return an empty optional, and that's it. Nice. Let's see something else as an anti-pattern in setters. Yeah, definitely. Don't use it in constructors because constructors special methods, so don't use it in setters. It's not meant to be set in setters. And it's only for getters, if you'd like. Not all your getters should be returning option. Okay, this is very important aspect because, like, whenever there is a getters, let's return an option. No, don't do this. Only for specific data, if you would like. For there is computation, they'd like to represent there is an absence for some queries, for some stuff like this. So don't use it and make it like this. Use normal data types, as we have mentioned before, and just only in some getter methods you can use optional of nullable if you would like to satisfy this returning type of optional of string, and check about the nullability of, which is availability of the value of the post code. Okay, we to another one, using optional in the method arguments, another common mistake. Yes, I found something like this. I would like to render a customer, and I have my cart, and I'm providing optional renderer. If it's not, I'm going to use the default render, which is my cool render. And also, if it doesn't, I might also use the name or not. So it's optional for me. So the main mandatory part here is the cart. And now, when I'm trying to call something like this, imagine the call here, like render customer, I have to create an optional of renderer of cool renderer, a new one, and optional of empty because I don't have, like, this is very complicated. This is very, very, very complicated for the caller. And sometimes, like, if I don't want, like, I will put like null, and that's it. So what to do here is do not use optional method argument. And this is much, much easier to do. Like, yeah, render as the data type, string name, cart, and you can do the checking here. So you check about the cart nullability because it's mandatory. And if the renderer is equal to null, I can throw an illegal argument exception. Render cannot be null if I want. And also the string as a name, because it's optional, I can use object require non-null or else get. If the name does not exist, return anonymous, and that's it. So the method call will be much simpler. If I would like the new render, I just pass it like this, and I can pass null here. I don't have anything to give to you as a name, and that's it. So it's about the simplicity. about the caller of your API, how you make things complicated for your caller. This is very important about designing an API. Also prefer sometimes to rely on null pointer exception if you don't like, because it has a meaning if you are passing nulls like this. So you can say like objects require non-null and render cannot be null, and also require non-null instead of doing the checking. This is perfectly available in the objects class since long time Java, and then you just simplify your code. It's not about just only the coding, and this is the way that you simplify. Sometimes you don't want to rely on null pointer exception, and you like to rely on some other exceptions from you. I have just, I'm preferring legal argument exception or other exceptions. I designed my object helper to act like object, but to extend. So I have here require none, null, or else throw. I design it, which has this type of t and x extend throwable, and this is how I use it using supplier and pick the type, and that's it. And then I execute. I get the value. So how can I use it? I use it like this. My object required not null or else. I'm giving the renderer to check about it. If it's not, it will throw any kind of exception I would like to throw with a predefined message that I want. So this is how you extend your business exceptions that you have. So this is one of the anti-patterns, yes, about calling, settings, instance variables as an optional, using as an argument for constructor, methods, setters, whatever it is, don't use it. Don't use optional to return empty collections or arrays, because they already have their own methods to do this. Like, don't do this. Optional of list of string, very complicated, because if we do something like I found some unfortunately doing something like this, but it's okay. We are learning and we are here to know what is the proper way to do it. So optional of null of item, this is very complicated, because simply we can do like this, just list of string, and if we would like to check if items equal to null, we have collections empty list, or return the items itself, and that's it, to avoid null pointer exceptions. So we can use empty map, we can use empty set, whatever it is. We can rely on this, not just to complicate. And also using optional in collections. I found this as very strange. If you have a map of string, and this is kind of definition optional of string, because the value of that key might exist or not. And remember that I told you optional is a class and occupy memory. And this is like, what if you have thousands of these values and you just introducing, and they don't exist, And what is the problem? Yeah, you're going to have a lot of occupied memory uselessly without any benefit. And even I can set null, and you can't do anything with it. So if you'd like to handle something like this, it's very easy. Then I check if the item equal to null when I get it, and then this key cannot be found, or else unwrapped item, I have to unwrap it to see if the value exists. It will be returned. If it's not, I return not found, then I print. Like, it's very complicated. Don't do this. Don't do it. Not to introduce another layer into your map, which is costly and also added to performance hit. It's very easy to do like this, and I can put null. I can put value for my key. My I2 has null key value, and if I'm doing something like this, I design it a small method in my class to handle all of this for me, to return the values whatever they are. So if they are null, it will be returned. If there is a value, it will be returned. If it does not exist a value for that key even, I will say not found. So this is how it is. I pass the map, string the key, I return map, get or default. The map has a method that says get or default. I get the key, and if it's not exist, it will turn not found. It's very easy. So imagine even comparing this code to the previous code, which is very complicated. It's much simpler and readable. Readability is one of the great things that we are looking and aiming for, because this is how we maintain our code. So yeah, we can also rely on contain keys, trivial implementation of extending hash map to introduce this method if you'd like. You can use Java 8 compute if absent method, and if you are using like Apache common default maps, you can definitely rely. There is a lot of bunch of alternative ways to use. Avoid also doing this, like map optional of string and the value, or even optional of optional. Like I found people using this, like no, don't introduce different another layer and memory head. Using optional, when to use optional, yes, of nullable instead of null. Do you remember that there is something when we talked about or else get? This is very important. Also, sometimes we have to make a difference between when we use of nullable instead of null of. So let's imagine that we have optional string and we are fetching a name with by an item by its ID, and then we have the name. But the name might result in a null. So if you are using off and the name, item name is null, this will throw null pointer exception because it's a null. So off only for predefined values. If you'd like for optional to check about if it's null, return an empty, yes, use of option. So you don't use off if the item has a null value or will finally evaluate to null. So use only of nullable, okay? So it will handle, there is no risk for null pointer exception and nothing else. So when to use off if we have something like this? This is useless because it will be always not null. And there is a pre-check here will happen if it's null or not. So look, why to do this? Just use off because you are avoiding, this tiny check, but when it comes to computation or repetition, it will count. So it takes CPU cycle. Let's move on to something else. Avoid using optional of generic types. So for non-generic optional. So if I like to using optional of integer, of long, of double, these kind of numbers, and because this is will introduce autoboxing and unboxing, so this is performance hit. So if you are involved in computation and very sensitive calculations, avoid this and use the default and normal optional wrappers, which is optional int, optional long, and optional double, and you are using their instance to work with numbers, and this is much more performant than using generic option. So we are now approaching the last part of the questions that I get and I observe it during the code reviews, which is I like optional. So now I learned a lot and I'm using streams and using some other API. How can I use it effectively with those APIs? Let's see. And there is some questions and code snippet. Let's go to it. So finally, there is no need to unwrap optionals by the way, for asserting equalities. So avoid doing something like this, like optional. I have actual item, I have expected item. When you are doing, unit testing or something like this, yeah, we sometimes like assert equals, we have expected item to get and actual item to get. So we don't need to do this. Like what to do is just use it like this, because it's actually the data will be unwrapped automatically, because assert equal use equal method, and equal method for optional has a special implementation to compare the values, so you don't have to use get. So it's very easy. So let's see something else. Avoid using identity sensitive operation on optional. So if you have two optionals of the same instance of the product, don't do this and expect it will be true. Why? They are objects. Did you get me? So use just equal. And equal will compare the internal values, as I told you, because it has a special implementation for optional. So avoid using sensitive. Don't feel that this is like value-based classes. No, it's not yet value-based classes and will never be, because it's just a holder for the internal. So don't use identity-sensitive operation like equality directly on optional, because it's finally class. So it will compare their memory references and use equals. And you don't have to use .get.equal, as I told you before. You just use equals, and equals method with its special implementation will compare the internal values exist inside each optional. Super nice. Avoid rejecting wrapped values based on is present. So I found like this: if the password does not satisfy the length, just return false. Is valid password length? So what to do? This is a special case. It's very easy. We have neat method called filter so that we can use. If the password is an optional and I try to filter it to the value to check the length, and I say is present. So like filter this. So based on the filtration, the value will exist or not. So if it exists, it will turn true. It is present. If it does not exist based on the filtration, the is present will return false. So this is much clearer and a neat way to do it as a filtration. So use filter because optional yes has a filter, and it's available since Java 8, as most of us still using Java 8. And if you are using Java 11, you have a very nice feature here to not use is present to check about the availability of the optional. So you get the cart items, and then you return option of nullable because of nullable, not off, because this cart might be null. And then is it empty cart? So I'm checking like and get the cart item here, and I have the optional. Then I say like if cart is not present by examination mark. So it's very tiny to introduce, but it's nice. It's more readable. Cart is empty. If the cart is empty, and that's it. We have two more recipes here, and don't use is present to check the value first, then transform it. Sometimes I would like, yes, I have optional, and the internal value, I would like to transform it, like it's in lowercase, and I would like to have it as an uppercase, or just change it to different form. So yes, we have to use is present, and then if it is, I'm using optional off because it's already present, and then I getting another optional by doing the get to uppercase, and or I will get optional empty and just return it. So this is how things has been done, and this is not the proper way to do it, and the proper way is just using map. Optional has a map and flat map, and let's use map here. So it's very easy to use it because map, it will return an optional, okay, in form of uppercase characters of that name, which is in lowercase. This is how I can transform easily. Let's see here when to use map to transform values. So imagine that we have a product, and the product stream I'm doing, this is a previous implementation I showed you, but I will take it back here in order to show you something very nice. Pay attention for this method, get name. Get name here returns string, okay? It's not optional of string. This is very important. So when we read here filter, and I'm filtering based on the price, as I told you, I find first product based on this filtration. I'm checking about its presence. I'm interested in the name, and they would like, to transfer it to uppercase, as I told you. So yeah, if it's present, get me the name and transform it to uppercase and attach it. If it's not attached name to not found, and I'm using get inside that this is the name that it's going to be returned. So I can use something like this. So if I would like to use map to do the previous things here, and I have this method which is returning a non-null string, I can chain it in one call like this. Okay, I have the filtration, find first, map product.get name. Yeah, this is from the, this is the map of find first, return an optional, and this is map attached to optional. So I just get interested in the name, not the product, and then also use map again to transfer it to uppercase, and because it's apply map here will return an optional of the name, and then I am interested in the name to transfer it to another optional, and then I can say or else if it does not exist after all of this, like these two maps, I will return not found. And imagine and pay attention, as I told you, get here is just returning a string. What if this get returning optional of string? In this way, I can't use those. I have to use in this way to use flat map sometimes to avoid something like this. Like our get method, our get name here, returning an optional, and I'm using optional of nullable as I told you before to check about the nullability of the name and do it like this. This is another way of getting the name or else not found, and then to uppercase if it's already exists. And if I would like my method look like this, not just returning simple string, I cannot use flat, I cannot use map, because this is returning an optional, and my value will be optional of string. So flat map is flatting the returned value as a string, because originally it's only one option. It does not wrap it again with optional. This is the main difference between when we use map and flat map. So here, because the product, I am interested in the name, and then I'm using this method, which is this one, inside the product. So I cannot use map, because if I use map, I will get the name as an optional of the name, which is string. So this is not the case. This will not work here. It will work on a different value, which is the internal optional of that string, not that string direct. So this is why I'm using the map. The case based on the method here that I'm using. So basic, if I have a chain like this and my method is just returning optional, I will use flat map. If my method normally returning normal value, I will use normally map, because it will actually wrap it with optional. Flat map is not wrapping, it returns the value as it is. Okay, and this is also available in Java 8. Last piece, do we need to chain optional API with a stream? Sometimes I have a stream and I have a collection, that list of them, something, and I need to fetch something from inside, and how to do this. So for example, let's say like I have a product list. I would like to get the product list here, as you can see, and I would like to fetch a product by ID. So this method trying to fetch the product by ID for that list. So I'm passing the string, and it returns optional of product, and definitely I'm using optional of nullable because the product might be null. In that case, it will return empty. So I'm using first map to just transfer all these kind of products, which is list of product names containing IDs, into optional of products. And then I'm using filter to see optional is present. Why? Because it's already optional. So I'm using normally on that optional, I'm filtering based its presence. If it's not, it will be empty. So we are filtering all the empty or not existing product, and then I'm using map to transfer to map to get the value of that and collect it to list as a product instead of like optional of that product. So I would like to return all these product as a list, as we would like to do. So if we want to chain, don't do like this is like, yeah, we can use it like this, but let's see how the proper way to do it. Like use optional to stream to hook to treat the optional instance as a stream. So I have the same method, but see, it's very easy, much clearer. I'm using the stream. Yes, I'm doing the mapping because I'm interested to get all the product based on their IDs. And now I'm using flat map because I'm say like, hey, you try to make this product as a stream which you are mapped. I'm using flat map to not wrap it as an optional, so I'm interested only in the product, then collect these products to list, and that's it. And by using Java 17 now, you don't have to collect, and then using collectors.toList, you can just call toList immediately without collect and toList. This is a very nice feature in Java 17. I wrote about on Java Magazine about the hidden gems in Java 17 and 16. So this is like refactoring tip, sorry. I'm just obsessed with code reviews, so I see like, I have to refactor it. But anyway, this is how you can hook the optional stream inside your normal stream and just introduce the internal value of the optional without the long version of this method. And also, we can convert optional to list like this. So if we would like to have a list of a specific type, I can use optional and convert it to list like this, because optional.stream will convert the optional data as a single stream, as a stream of single optional value. So this is very interesting because we would like to hook. Then we can treat this kind of singular value as, stream, and I can collect it, I can aggregate it, or I can do whatever it is on the value as a stream. So this is the main idea of hooking optional inside the stream in one call without doing a lot of mapping and things like this. So by reaching here, I almost done and finished my presentation. So thank you very much. Okay, sorry, I didn't see the notifications. So it's always about the time. I'm so sorry for this. So thank you very much for attending this session. And I don't know if there is some questions.
There are some questions, but I will ask you, please, can you respond them into the chat room? It's the chat in the main room.
Yes, which is Rocket.
Yeah. Emmanuel asked you why you use the comparison versus the other. So I will give the screen to Anna, and I will ask you to go on the Rocket, and you will see it in the chat questions there.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your conference and enjoy your day. Stay healthy and see you soon.